Alright, okay, good evening everyone. So we'll get started for today's session. So as usual, we'll start off with a quick disclaimer. Okay, everything that we'll be covering in today's session are solely based on my personal opinion. They do not directly translate to any form of trade advisory or signals. And of course, trading and investing involve risks. So make sure you're aware of that and have your own proper risk management in place. Okay. So for those of you who are new to join us, welcome. The structure over here, basically what we're doing is to run through the overview of the market, highlight some of the potential opportunities that you want to keep an eye on for the week, and then I'll wrap up the session with a short Q&A. Okay, so if you guys have a little bit of questions, you can post it up, and I'll be able to answer that question at the end of it. Okay. So, quick start over here. The overview of the week. It's always important to get started by looking at what are some of the core high impact news that you want to be aware of. Okay, so this week here we have a couple of important ones coming in from the US side. Okay, so you can see over here, 8:30 tomorrow in the evening, we have the core CPI year on year. Core CPI month on month and CPI year on year. Naturally, that's going to be important, right? Because the Fed is still keeping track of inflation. They are at the juncture of deciding when to cut rates. So, of course, if CPI does support the Fed cutting rates earlier, then that might be a weakening of the dollar. Now, if CPI comes in still pretty high, then we would likely see the Fed stalling in terms of cutting rates and kind of extend the high interest rate environment a little bit longer. Okay. And then on a Thursday, we also have some U.S. news coming in, PPI, retail sales, and of course unemployment claims. To me, among those, I think retail sales would be one of the more important one. Okay, again, because the Fed is also tracking how well the economy is doing. If again retail sales starts to drop, it's not as healthy, it's not positive, then that might hint to the Fed to cut rates a little bit earlier as well. Okay, so some of this data would naturally contribute to the decision on whether the Fed will cut rate earlier or later. Okay, and that would then translate to the dollar movement, right? So we can expect a little bit of volatility over here. For those of you who are more into news trade, Tuesday CPI year on year is a potential data that you can actually utilize to trade news as well, right? To capitalize on that short-term volatility. All right, so that's a quick overview. Very quickly before I jump into the charts to talk about it, for the benefit of everyone, especially those of you who are still very new to the approaches that I use to engage the market. Just want to very quickly walk through and introduce to you the DSC framework, right? So this is basically a framework that I utilize whenever I approach trading. Okay, it doesn't matter what methodology you are subscribed to, what strategy you're using. The framework itself is an overarching kind of approach. Okay, because I think it doesn't matter what strategy you use, you need to have these three elements inside to contribute to a profitable winning trade. Okay. And these three core elements are basically DSC, right? Direction, setup, and context. Right. So as I walk through, and share with you some opportunities today, you probably would also be able to extract, the application of this framework here. Right. Now, obviously, we won't go too much into the setup itself. That's something that we probably won't have the time to really go in that, right? But the setup is basically something that I provide more in-depth understanding and how I actually execute certain trades and manage certain trade based on the setup with some of the members, right? So again, if you're ready, if you're interested, you can actually always check out some of the services that I have. But today, a lot of the focus will be very much on the direction, okay? Sharing with you for the week itself, near term to short term, which are some of the direction that you want to be focusing on, right? We call that directional bias. Okay? And that's the first thing you need to do, right? Because any instruments, whether it's FX, commodities, stocks, okay, anything that you want to trade, the first thing to establish is, do I have a clear, high probability direction? If there isn't, then that's not worth taking the trade, right? So the first thing is to determine, do I have a clear directional bias that I can really focus on? Okay, and then of course with that, then you need the setup. Basically, setup is to tell you when and where to get involved, right? Which price, when to get in, when to get out. And then last thing is to kind of put things together, right? That's where the context comes in. Looking for confluences, looking for multi-time frame alignment. Is this trade worth taking? Is it a high conviction trade? Is it a more aggressive trade? How are you going to manage your risk and sort of those kind of things, right? So those are all the context side. Okay. So with this, I hope as we go through today's session, it gives you some better understanding, and you can see how this are being applied. Okay. So let's start off with the dollar index. Okay. What I'm looking here on the chart usually is on the 4-hour time frame. Okay, so that gives me a higher time frame perspective to establish the direction. Then usually I like to go down to the hourly to look for execution, right? That's where the setup phase comes in. Okay, so dollar index. Okay, what are we looking at for the week? What are we expecting? Okay, so last week we were expecting the dollar index to continue to pull back towards the 50% mark. We kind of got that, right? So market kind of hit the targets. We were short-term bearish. Right now, you want to be a little bit careful, right? Because this may have completed. Let me just update this and include a little bit more details. This may have complete a three-way structure to the downside as well, right? So this week, of course, right now it's still short-term bias, but if this starts to pull up a little bit, okay, the analysis would need to be updated a little bit, and we may start to look for potential bullish opportunity. Okay. So this one here, of course, depending on maybe by tonight, tomorrow, how price is developing, the buyers here would start to look for bullish opportunity in the dollar. Okay, so if the dollar is likely going to strengthen, then that would also bring forward towards some of the major pairs that we are trading. Okay, and of course that may also very nicely confluence in with the CPI releasing tomorrow, right? So if CPI comes in, the dollar strengthen impulsively, that's great. Ideally, we want to see a V shape, and then we'll start to rotate to a bullish bias for the week. Okay, so that's on dollar index. And of course, if you take a look at the euro side of things, last week we were expecting this to hit the area here, right? Three-wave completion. I would say more or less we're likely done. Okay. Again, I'm just giving a little bit more time to see how market's gonna react off this area. Kind of inverse to the dollar, right? If you see a little bit of a downside here, then we'll start to look for bearish opportunity because completion or three-wave, we expect a minimum pullback. The bias here would be bearish bias. Right? So euro dollar is definitely something to keep an eye on, right? Again, depending on how aggressive or how conservative you are, if you are more conservative, the take is to wait for a V-shaped down first, right? So you want an impulsive drop, then a corrective move for you to take the sell trade. If you're aggressive, you can start to look for breakout opportunity, obviously. Kind of combine it with maybe tomorrow news trade, right? You can look for it. Okay. So that's on euro dollar. One of the potential pair I will focus on as well, right? This is definitely in my watch list. Just waiting out for the confirmation and then the setup. Then I'll be interested in this trade. Okay. Pound dollar is slightly different from other major pairs over here, right? Because the dollar index, we're expecting dollar strengthening, and therefore the major, we're looking at downside. But pound dollar here is slightly different because we got a massive impulsive break, okay, out of this structure here as well. So I'm more interested to see if we can get a corrective pullback. If we do, then this would likely be more upside, right? So overall, pound dollar is slightly different from all other majors. Okay, seems like we may get one more push, right? So from a higher time frame perspective, okay, kind of zoom out a little bit, right? From the higher time frame perspective, we may be seeing the pound dollar developing potentially what we know as a 5-wave structure here. Okay, so that may be something to look out for. Okay, so this means that internally over here, the impulsive move up may be the third wave, and a corrective pullback may be an internal 4-way, and we're expecting one more up to complete the 5th. Okay. So, yep, this is going to be slightly different from other major pairs. It may go against a little bit in terms of the dollar index view as well. But again, it's a little bit too early. We want to see a correction before we commit to the upside. Okay. Now, this is not something in my watch list at the moment. I think probably need to take some time for this to develop and give me that clarity. Aussie dollar is very much similar to the euro side. Okay, so last week we expected this tree, we got it. Okay, I mean the market moved nicely. The upside hit the target. Right now it's kind of rejecting to downside. So this week here my focus is to look for bearish buys. Okay, so very similar to euro, right? We're basically waiting for the setup to come to us, and euro and Aussie would be a potential trade that we can look into. Okay, then we have dollar Canadian. Dollar Canadian over here, I'm also bigger perspective, it's bearish. Okay, so dollar Canadian has completed potentially this as a diagonal. Okay, we got our very first impulsive drop. So over here, if you can get a corrective structure to the upside, then we can expect one more move. Okay, so short term, we may see market do a little bit of a consolidation here. And then after that, you know, you'll be focusing on sell opportunity. Okay, so dollar CAD is bearish bars for now, right? So again, kind of align, overall, pretty much aligned except for dollar Canadian. Okay, but again, dollar Canadian short term can go higher, right? Which means that it's still dollar strength, but maybe after that, the Canadian would kind of step in, and then the CAD will be relatively stronger than the dollar. I won't drill too into like, you know, the correlation on different assets. But the idea is, of course, the more confluence you get, the higher the conviction you're gonna get, right? But bear in mind also, each of the currency is a pairing. Okay, so you have two factors contributing to prices every other time. Okay, so that's the take on dollar Canadian. Again, dollar CAD is in my watch list. Okay, so there's something you can look out for as well. Then we have dollar yen. Dollar yen came down pretty impulsive. So again, the bias is bearish. If you can get a correction here, then potentially you can look for sell. But again, this will take time, right? So I'm not really focusing on the dollar yen right now. Okay, I'm just leaving this aside, let it play out, and then maybe come back another week. Okay, same thing here in gold. Okay, so gold kind of made a very strong impulsive push to the upside. So there's no reason to be selling it. But again, buying at the top may not make sense right now. Okay, we are bullish bias, but we want to wait for the pullback. So this is again, I think something that you're probably not gonna get anything meaningful this week. So I'm leaving this aside. Okay. Oil. Okay. Oil here I'm bearish. Focus. But again, you know, we want to see how market is likely gonna develop, right? Now it's coming down pretty neat. But of course, you know, I want to be also very careful when the market kind of reach towards the bottom of the channel, because this can bounce back up, right? But this pattern structure here seems to suggest that there's a good chance we'll actually see the market, you know, be come back down all the way at the previous low at 67.80. Of course, you know, we have some minor levels over here, potentially this area. Okay. And what we can also look into is the Fibonacci retracement ratios, right? Okay. So 60% one, 61.8, 50% mark is somewhere there, right? So 50% is essentially confluencing with the bottom of the channel, right? So as I mentioned, that would be crucial too. Okay, so the application of context, right? Just to share a little bit over here. If the setup is basically here, right? Then you start to realize, oh, okay, if I'm going to sell here, you know, my profit potential is not huge. Usually I would like to avoid trades like that. Okay, so it's not just about the setup, right? Sometimes you want to ask yourself, is this setup worth taking? Okay, so that's the context element. Okay, but overall, crude oil here, basically I'm bearish. Okay, I'm bearish bias. Okay, more interested into looking for sell opportunity. But for now, this is not still in my watch list, because I think there are better ones out there for me to focus, right? Like as I mentioned, euro dollar, Aussie dollar, dollar CAD. I think those are way clearer than crude oil itself. Okay, so this one here, I'm just having it at the side right now. Okay, then we have the S&P 500, right? So S&P 500 over here, the price seems to be putting in a crawl. Okay, so I'm expecting short-term pullback, right? Now, how deep this pullback is, we'll definitely need to keep track and monitor. But right now I'm neutral, because fundamentally and macro perspective, we are bullish on the equities. US equities for the year, right? But technical wise, we're seeing a little bit of crawl, but we are still in an uptrend. Okay, so I don't want to be too aggressive in looking for sell setups. Therefore, I'm still neutral at the moment until we get a little bit more confirmation, right? So what's the confirmation I would like to see on S&P over here is a break below impulsively, right? Ideally, take out some of this previous mini low, and then wait for a correction. That would give me the conviction, okay, we may take this one more down, maybe towards this area, right? Then I'll be interested in that. Okay, but I want to be very, very patient on this, to be selling the equities, right? To be selling the US equities, I want to be patient with it. Okay, so I'm neutral for now and just let the market develop and see how it goes first. Okay. The pound yen here has really nothing much. Neutral. I think overall the market is in the consolidation phase, so I don't want to be trading within this kind of range. So I'm just leaving this aside, right? Nothing much there. Aussie yen, very nice, right? Again, moving towards the target that we're looking out for. This was also one of the trade that I managed to take last week. Kind of covered that in the trade review video as well, right? If you kind of missed that, you can always check it out again. But I kind of cover, the 2 Aussie yen trades that I took last week. Okay, so right now, what am I looking at, right? Right now on Aussie yen, basically this is a 3-wave pattern that may have completed, right? So obviously it's not going to be short-term bearish anymore. But we'll want to slightly shift towards neutral and see how market is going to react off this area. Okay, if this is going to bounce up strongly, then obviously we're going to start to rotate into a bullish opportunity after that. Okay, so we have this as an impulse, right? Then we have a 3-wave correction. If this is all it is, then we can start to look for upside. Okay, so some of this bias, because we are just basically we just touch some of these key areas here. So we'll probably need to take maybe 1 or 2 days to see how the market react off these areas before we kind of shift our bias and start focusing on the opposite direction. Okay, yeah. So Aussie yen, if there is gonna be an opportunity, I think it's likely only gonna be somewhere around Thursday or Friday, right? If not, then it will be something next week, right? Potentially we can look for the buy side of things. Okay. Pound odd is a little bit tricky, to be honest. The market seems to be developing within this range at the moment, but I'm slanting towards being bearish because context-wise, market has been putting up a move quite extended, so I'm expecting at least some kind of healthy pullback, right? So I'm actually holding to a bearish bias. But again, I want to see a clear 3-wave first, right? So we kind of have impulse move down. 1, 2, 3. Okay, ideally I want to see something like that. Okay, so of course short term, if this pullback, we can still look for a short term buy, and then after that we'll look for the sell to complete the bigger 1, 2, 3. Right? So I think internal structure, the dollar CAD as well as the pound odd, pretty much similar, right? You can see here 1, 2, 3, right? So short term can be looking for buy, longer term we can look for the sell. Pound odd is pretty much the same. Short term we can expect 1, 2, 3, look for the buy, and then longer term we can look for the sell. Okay, so these 2 pairs in my watch list, keeping a close watch in terms of we may get something maybe tomorrow, Wednesday, and then after that maybe flip it in the opposite direction at the end of the week. Okay? So this 2 pair, I think, is something that you definitely want to pay more attention to. Okay? EuroCAD, nothing there. This seems to be going into a consolidation phase, right? So just leave it. I'm neutral on that. Bitcoin, neutral now. I don't think you want to be buying at the very, very top. Okay, we are also getting close towards April and May, which is essentially the halving period. Okay, so I don't want to be buying at the top right now, right? So I want to be neutral. If I want to buy, I would want to ideally wait for this to pull back, going into halving, then only look for the buy. Okay, because buying at the top, then if this starts to pull back, then your risks, your stop loss need to put quite wide, right? So that's not in favor. But if this pulls back, then of course we have a better, or say tighter stop, right? That will give you a better risk to reward ratio as well. Okay, so yeah, Bitcoin here, really nothing much this week. Go. Yeah, so very quickly cover some of the other things over here. Okay, A50, which is the China index, right? So seems to be developing as expected, likely completing a fifth wave here. Okay, so if I very quickly do a projection of this, let's just drag this out. There's a good chance fifth wave projection is there. Okay, yeah, kind of confluence that as well. Phipps is there. I think this would probably just avoid ignore. Okay, so I think if you're interested into A50 China market, okay, this is how I'm gonna look out for it, right? Of course, we're bullish bias, and you want to be looking out for buy. Wait for the setup to come to you. Then that's the projection. Okay, so bullish overall. I think there's still a little bit more upside. Same thing here in the Hong Kong market. Okay, probably the market will try and break that. Okay, Hong Kong market, the pattern here is not as bullish as A50, right? Okay, so this one here, you can also put in a channel structure, okay, to kind of project that. Okay, so of course, key level here, if this can break above that impulsively and does a correction, then we can expect more upside. Okay. But I think if you're interested in buying, Hong Kong or China, right, between these two, I think A50 seems to be presenting a neater opportunity. The overall structure seems to be clearer. Okay, so I hope that helps. Okay. In terms of FTSE, oops. Okay, in terms of FTSE over here, we're bullish still, right? So this one here just need to update a little bit. I think overall structure did not change. Okay, the overall structure remains intact. You're still basically, oops. Okay, still basically looking for the buy side. Okay. Yeah. Okay, so this is FTSE, the UK 100. Okay, so the overall structure is still the same, right? So last week we kind of talked about this as a correction. There's some movement, but overall this is still corrective in nature. Okay, so we're still looking at upside. Okay. US 30, yes, US 30 is slightly different in terms of the price pattern as compared to the S&P and Nasdaq, right? S&P and Nasdaq, we have shared a view, okay, but this one here seems to be developing a little bit different. The Dow Jones seems to be developing a clear pullback as a three-wave structure at the moment. Okay, now this pullback can develop deeper, right? So it can really develop into something like that. 1, 2, 3 here. Okay, this can really extend a little bit, right? So my take is, if you're interested in buying US equities, the Dow Jones will give you a better setup. Okay, Dow Jones here will give you a better setup. Depending on this pullback. Yeah, it can go very deep. Okay. Yeah, so the area here to focus, this can actually, based on FIB, this can actually go back towards, near to this low. Okay, let me just do the adjustment. Yeah. Okay, so this is my take on Dow Jones, right? So quite slightly different from S&P. You can see the pattern structure. Okay, so S&P, as I mentioned, you want to be a bit patient and see if we can get the breakdown impulsively. Then we can look for the sell in the short term. As for Dow Jones here, right, US 30, I'll be more interested to see if we can continue to get a corrective development to the downside. If we do, then I'm actually more interested in the buy side, right? So this two different index would give me a slightly different view. Okay, but for now we don't have a clear kind of direction and setup yet, right? You probably want to just be patient for the first half of the week. Okay. Cool. Quick one here. Oddcat. Oddcat kind of completed that tree wave potentially, so just be patient and careful about it. Okay, so I would say neutral right now because we then expect maybe potentially a deeper pullback before the next move up. Okay, yeah. So that's my take on Aussie Cat. Okay, we may get a deeper pullback, so just be patient. Cat Frank, yeah, I think overall structure did not change much. Okay, I think Cat Frank is still generally bullish, but of course you also want to be careful because this can be a 1-2 and it can do something like that, right? I think I explained it last week as well. But of course, if you are more aggressive, you can look for the buy. If this trade doesn't play out, then of course you'll be quickly adapting into this as a potential trade. Okay, it's gonna be complex because of the franc, right? Franc itself is just not as straightforward as a currency itself, right? You can see how franc pass. The nature of it is they like to develop, red and white, red and white. There's a lot of overlapping move, even if it's trending. Okay, it's choppy in nature, right? So personally, I'm not trading any of the francs. Okay, good. So those are some of the things that I would like to cover. Okay, so very quickly, I think we do have a couple of things we can definitely look out for, as I mentioned earlier. Some of those are on the table. Definitely, you want to give it just 1 or 2 days, and then you gain clarity of it. Then there are some that I think definitely more interesting ones to be looking out for, right? Like dollar Canadian short term upside, and then after that downside. Pound Aussie short term upside, and then after that downside as well. Cool. Okay. Crypto for me, I really have nothing there. Okay. I've been scanning through the crypto market every day as well, right? But as you mentioned, ADA, I just don't like how this is developing. Okay. If you are super aggressive, you can see this as an impulse correction here, and then you can start to look for upside. But I'm gonna be generally overall a little bit more patient going into April, because I understand that April and May is where the halving of Bitcoin takes place, right? So we might again see the market maybe slow down a little bit because everyone may eventually start to wait for that event, right? Uh, I Again, I don't want to be in the market when there is such a major thing likely gonna happen, right? I will always want to wait for being more conservative, right? That's the word I think. So is this a valid potential setup to buy? Yes, right? But again, it's aggressive in nature, right? Yeah, so that's my take. Okay, I basically scanned through some of this crypto side, right? There's really, I mean, like XRP is quite similar. We have this structure here, but I'm not keen to be, you know, focusing on some of these some of these cryptocurrencies at the moment. Okay, yeah. So as you mentioned, right, ADA, SOL, even SOL here. Yeah, I don't like this development. Okay. So yeah, my personal take here is crypto side, maybe just be patient, wait a while, see if you can get a better structure to be trading on. Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, every day I scan through the crypto as well, really nothing there. Oh. Okay. Um Good. Now, before we end off the session over here, very quickly, again, some of you may already be aware of that. For those of you who don't, okay, you can head over to everythingtrading.com, okay, and of course, click into sign up if you are very new. It's free to register for an account, right? And once you sign up for your account, you can click login, okay. So very quickly, let me just show you on that, right? So once you log in, okay, you'll be able to find some resources. Let me check, right? All right, okay. So once you log in, on the left, you can find some resources that you can have access to, right? But what I want to bring your attention to is the live trading sessions, right? So inside here, there are a couple of different traders running live sessions. You can of course register for them, okay. And for me, what I do is every Wednesday I run a Chinese live session, okay, in the evening, and then on Thursday evening, okay, that's where I run the session in English, right, inside over here. Okay, so again, for those of you who are still very new, have yet to register for account, can just go to everythingtrading.com, register for a free one, and then you log in and then you can access to all this information over here. Okay. Sunajo says, I think everybody FOMO buying crypto before halving. Yeah, but you don't want to be the you don't want to exactly follow the herd mentality, right? Um, yeah. To be honest, I'm not gonna be surprised, right, if we see a major pullback first. Okay, then only we rise, right? So I'm actually waiting for that. Now, if we don't get that pullback and the market basically just keep going higher, so be it, right? We'll always have another opportunity to get involved anyway. Okay, even if we don't trade crypto, right? To me, it doesn't really hurt us much. Okay, because you can trade any other things, right? We are not looking at absolute um dollar movement, right? We're looking at risk to reward ratio, which is basically the percentage um, of profits that you're getting in relation to the risk that you're putting in. Okay, so again, a lot of times people would be very excited in crypto when it's moving because the price move can be huge, right? But again, when you factor in the volatility, your stop loss is definitely going to be wider as well, and then your risk to reward is just about the same, right? Because it's a ratio format. Right? So if you're trading, it really doesn't matter, hey, what asset it is, because at the end of the day, you are looking at protecting the downside, right? Managing risk, and then looking at the risk reward ratio as a payout. Okay, so hopefully that give you a perspective as to not to be FOMO in the crypto market. Okay, because opportunities are everywhere, right? Even if you miss out on the Bitcoin side, it's fine. You just trade other things, and you make a profit from other assets. Okay. Good. Okay. I think that's about it from me for today over here. Again, I think this week definitely there are some things to look up for. Last week there isn't much. Last week I only took three trades. Okay. But looking at how things are developing this week, we may get a little bit more activity. Okay, so pay attention to those that I've highlighted. You may want to add them into your watch list, keep track of them, and then if there's a setup um, that allows you to execute trade, then that's where the opportunity is. Okay. So good. That's all for me. All the best for the new trading week. Okay, and as usual, we'll see you guys in the next one. Okay, so see you guys. Bye bye.